Afternoon here in Milton Keynes, indeed in Milton Keynes stables, one of the foremost police stable blocks in the country, and with me is Alan Baldwin, who is a former commander here in Milton Keynes. Prior to which you were in the Met, you came to Thames Valley, you were here as an assistant chief constable, and then Alan, you moved on to Cambridgeshire, where you were deputy chief constable.
That's right.
And since when, having retired from the formal part of policing, if I can put it that way, you have set up something called Practice into Progress. Have I got that right?
Practice to Progress. That's
Practice
right.
to Progress.
Yeah.
P2P.
P2P. Yeah.
Which focuses on recruitment into policing and development of officers whilst in policing. So quite a number of areas for us to cover encapsulated within that. But it would be remiss of me not first just to remark on this wonderful vehicle that is parked behind us, that we have just discovered has arrived only within the last 3 months.
That's right. So the mounted section have told us today. I mean, for me personally, it's exciting to be back. It's some time since I've been at Milton Keynes Police Station. I was the area commander here for a couple of years. Immensely proud of everything the team did in Milton Keynes, and immensely proud of the mounted section, which is one of only a few mounted sections in policing across the country, and a remarkable group of people that deliver public safety right across the Thames Valley area, right across the country, supporting other forces and other communities, and tackling some real tough challenges. And I guess unusually, a mounted section set in the heart of one of the biggest cities in the UK, Milton Keynes, fastest growing city in Europe at one stage, 250,000 people here, and this whole team in this building behind me and other police buildings across the borough, taking care of people and doing a good job, I think.
Absolutely, and this is a real treat for me as well, because I've been to Milton Keynes Police Station on a number of occasions, always in a professional capacity, and never encouraged here or transported here by officers at the time. But I've never been to the stable block, and we've got permission just to take a look over here into the riding school, and a lesson going on at the moment, and also to head down into the stable block. So as we're walking down towards here, Alan, before we move on to the detailed professional side, you also have a family interest in the equine world, I think, and
yes, in as much as my daughter is a very keen rider, and has been for all of her life almost.
So this is not something that you simply took a dare I say, a remote professional interest in, but
no, I had to take a personal interest in it as a father as well. These creatures are magnificent creatures, and
so this is Loki. I believe that's Loki. At least that's what the nameplate is saying. And some of the horses down here are currently out in the fields rather than in the stable block. But a number of them are also recent recruits. So this is Harper. This is the police horse that was named after the police officer who was killed in, well, tragic circumstances, dreadful circumstances. So police horse Harper, in memory of PC 7605 Andrew Harper. And then further down the stable block we have Neptune, who I'm told is the youngster, born 2014, so 6-7 years old, and still the youngster, and I'm sure sparkling police career ahead of them. So
I'm sure, and I have to say, they're big, aren't they?
They certainly are.
Goodness me.
They certainly are. 19 hands, I think.
I think there was a horse here called Titan when I worked here, who was around 19 hands and reputedly the biggest police horse in the country. But some of the animals we've seen today are 18 hands, and If you're not a horse person, and I'm not, just to be absolutely clear, I wouldn't even know how to describe 18 hounds other than to say they tower above us.
Well, bloody tall, I
Yes,
think
quite.
is a politer end of the description, but very tall indeed.
There you go.
So let's just loiter by the wonderful new police vehicle, and let's start I think with the area that you're currently working in. So P2P focuses on supporting the recruitment and the development of those wanting to become police officers, and those that are in policing but wanting to further develop their career. Tell me something about how you got into that and what it is that that makes you passionate about that.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, just before I left policing, I was fortunate enough to be involved with the College of Policing, assessing people that were looking to become very senior leaders. The College of Policing run something that I think is absolutely brilliant called the Senior Leaders Development Centre, which puts senior leaders from underrepresented groups through their paces to practice ready for the real thing, and for them to understand whether they're ready for those chief officer ranks. And I and some other people that are involved with P2P, Practice to Progress, were assessing, and I thought, do you know what, Bernard, that's a brilliant idea, because as adult learners, most of us want to learn through experience. In fact, that's how we learn. I thought it was a brilliant idea. What I did think, though, was that it would be great if it wasn't just for senior leaders, that concept of practicing promotion processes and assessment processes would be great if it could be rolled out to everybody, regardless of rank, and not just underrepresented groups, but of course that's hugely costly for policing. So very shortly after that, I retired after 32 years from policing and set up Practice to Progress. And what we do is we put on mock assessments, interviews and presentations with our highly skilled and very diverse group of assessors to put people through their paces, to practice what they might come across in real life on their processes, and then to get great feedback so they can learn and develop. And in summary, we do it for people who want to join policing, so recruits. We do it for people in policing, so police officers and staff that are looking to get promoted or selected for a different role. And so far it's been, we like to think, pretty successful. We've helped just over 2,000 people.
2,000 people in 2 years? 2,000
people in 2 years, yeah. Which I think is quite impressive. That's down to the team. The team are fantastic. Practice to Progress. We've helped 2,000 people. We did something that many organisations wouldn't do. We opened ourselves up to an independent evaluation, which was conducted by an academic from working for the Metropolitan Police, but from Cambridge University, and they concluded independently that Practice to Progress could improve your chances of success by up to 78%. And that really was just spending 3 or 4 hours running through the processes. It's a bit like your mock A-levels or your first year at university, or a friendly football match. You put through your paces against the clock, against the opposition, the competency value framework. And so they concluded that we could improve people's chances by 78%. And really importantly for me, Bernard, these 2,000 people we've surveyed, and we've asked them, what do you think? And 99% rate us as excellent or highly satisfied. So we think that we're helping people develop to join policing, and also to develop their careers in policing. And just finally, if I might, with a real focus on supporting underrepresented groups, because we know the representation challenges, and it's something I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to speak about, but we have a real focus on making our service accessible to all and helping those that need us.
So I'd like to come back, if I may, if we may, to the underrepresented groups in a moment or two, but I'd like first just to look at the 2,000 that you've supported in the context of the current government's determination to recruit 20,000 police officers over the course of 3 years. Now, I always struggle to understand, and I have been told the definitive answer to this on a number of occasions, but is that 20,000 new recruits, or is that net 20,000 additional officers, in which case, you know, one needs to take account of the retirements and departures during the course of that time. And indeed, how does P2P fit in with that, if indeed at all?
Sure. I understand why you would ask that question, because it can get quite complicated, and there's been quite a lot of narrative in the media about different things. My understanding is it's 20,000 new posts, so quite rightly people will talk about officers, because it's officers that do the job, but it's 20,000 new posts. But let's not forget we lost more than 20,000 posts since 2010 through austerity. To get 20,000 additional officers, policing has to recruit, I think, well over 50,000, so that's to effectively stand still and deliver 20,000 more people, more officers on the beat. 50,000 or so new officers requires a lot of applications, and there are different commentaries around this, but it might be 300,000 applications or more. I've seen different commentators saying different things. How does P2P fit? Well, as we know, there is a real challenge with representation in terms of local communities, and what we try to do is help people join policing by allowing them to practice some of the things they would go through on their assessment, and particularly, and many of those 2,000 people I've mentioned are young people of colour who wouldn't necessarily get the support to get into policing, and we P2P have been supported by the Met and other forces to help them better understand the processes in joining policing, so they stand a better chance.
So there is an opportunity here to bring the policing proportions more in line with the population at large. Very broadly, policing underrepresents minority groups quite significantly, not just on gender, but also on race, on ethnicity, on faith even, and also on sexual orientation, although some of those are more difficult to measure than others. Looking to recruit the additional 20,000, it ought to be, ought it not, easier to go to traditional places where police officers have been recruited, but improving on diversity on the mix of police officers suggests that actually policing needs to go elsewhere to look for those that previously or to date are underrepresented. Where does policing need to go to find those individuals?
Well, policing needs to go to the heart of its communities. That's the bottom line. You know, policing needs to be representative of those communities. You'll have heard many times the Pelian notion: the police of the public of the police. Therefore, police needs to be representative. But of course, it's not that simple. We know in many communities there are confidence issues with the police, you know, and when I say many communities, I don't just mean minority communities in terms of, say, ethnicity. We know there are challenges around age. I've spoken to one force that can't recruit enough young people, and of course you want people to have a career in policing and progress through. I've spoken to others that can't recruit older people, so again, age is a challenge. So policing needs to understand, and you know, there are 47, 48 forces across the UK, aren't there? We talk about, often gets talked about the 43 in England and Wales, but you know, Police Scotland, very big force, Police Service Northern Ireland, Civil Nuclear Constabulary, Ministry of Defence Police,
absolutely,
British Transport Police. All these forces have their own workforce challenges, and they have some challenges that are unique to them and some that are shared with others, so they need to have a really clear attraction strategy and attraction plan to get into the right communities and attract and recruit the right kind of people into policing. You know, people that want to be in it because they want to make that difference, because they want to tackle criminality, because they want to help safeguard with partners. You know, that job of policing, which is a complex, complicated job, has to be done by people who are representative of the communities that they're serving.
And from what you've seen so far, do you think that recruitment of the net extra 20,000 is proceeding as you think it might?
Well, let's not forget, and to be fair to absolutely everyone, the dreadful global pandemic that is COVID hit I think just after policing was seeking to increase its national establishment by 20,000. So is it progressing? I'm sure it is. We are seeing lots of people join policing, lots of great people, and I have to say, by the way, we're seeing lots of people come and be supported by P2P that perhaps wouldn't have even joined policing had they not had that experience where they were supported by forces to do that. But it's a challenge. I think, I'm not a big, I don't have a great memory for figures, but I think in March this year, so that's March 2021, the Home Office was saying they were about a third of the way through of that 20,000 increase, and of course we've got to recruit. I keep saying we, I'm not in the police anymore, Bernard, what am I doing?
Well, it's the wider we, because I think we're in policing,
we're all,
and therefore we're all supporting
family.
Instinctively more police officers ought to be a good thing, in the same way that fewer police officers surely is a bad thing.
Well, and I think everybody I know in policing would agree with that last comment. But is it on track? I guess only the numbers would tell us that. It felt like it was on track in March, given all the other challenges. Is it on track around representation? I think for me, there's a still big question mark over that.
So one of the challenges in recruiting is that associated with vetting, because it's not simply a question, of course, of recruiting the numbers. It's also making sure that the individuals recruited are fit to wear the uniform, and that you're confident that they continue to be fit to wear the uniform during the course of their police service. We're recording this shortly after the verdict on the despicable murder of Sarah Everard, and vetting is quite rightly now in the news, and I personally have no doubt that it will continue to be for quite some time. To my mind, there is a substantial challenge there for policing that is yet to be properly addressed. Don't wish it just now to move us on to the question of violence against women and girls, although that is a substantial issue in itself.
It is.
Focusing just on the vetting challenge, and I guess casting your mind back to your time, particularly as Deputy Chief Constable of Cambridgeshire, where you would have overseen some of the challenges that there are there. What do you think of the challenges that there are there? Is to your knowledge police vetting perfect as things stand, or probably not? Well,
probably not. In a straightforward answer to what you say, there is, I guess, very little perfect in life, let alone policing. And you're right to reference that dreadful murder of Sarah Everard. That really hit policing very, very hard, and sentencing, as you say, was last week, and it's raised, amongst many issues, this issue of vetting. Of course, there's an organisational challenge where vetting takes a time, and policing wants to recruit people and has got to get people in and train them, and that takes a protracted period of time. Vetting itself is part of that process, and it takes a period of time. I also know, because I, as a deputy chief, we had backlogs in vetting that took a while to clear, because that involves money, Bernard, and you need to recruit top quality vetting people who do a great job. And when I looked after that area of professional standards in Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire and Cambridgeshire constabularies, we had a brilliant vetting team, but it wasn't big, and chief officers are being asked all the time to make tough decisions around where they can invest their resource. And of course, you will also know that you can't, even if you have money, and policing doesn't have a huge amount of money, you can't just turn that into capacity and capability at the drop of a hat.
You can't turn the tap on and off
absolutely not. And
at
of course,
whim.
The tap was, if it wasn't turned off, it was certainly turned down in terms of resourcing.
Yes.
10 years ago or so, and policing is still suffering the consequences of that, in my personal view.
Yes.
And vetting needs to improve, backlogs need to be cleared. I think, if I'm honest, policing is very clear about the type of people it wants. The standards in policing are higher,
yes,
and so they should be, and that's been covered by many a judge and magistrate saying exactly that, and so they should be. And so police officers and staff have to operate to the highest of standards, and policing has to make sure it's getting the right people in. And there are some backlogs, and it takes time and it takes money, and there are a number of competing demands, and that is a complex situation to resolve. But may I say, sorry, forgive me, Bernard, but it's a situation that must be resolved, because policing is here to protect the public, and it needs the good people to do that.
So policing needs good people to do that. Policing and society needs the confidence in the police officers that there are, and also checks, appropriate checks that those police officers don't go bad during the course of their police service, which also, I imagine, involves fellow police officers keeping an appropriate watching eye on their colleagues, supporting them as colleagues, but also prepared to call them out as on behalf of society where that is appropriate.
Yeah, and I think I go back to my days. You mentioned I was in the Metropolitan Police in Thames Valley in Cambridgeshire. Before that, I was with West Mercia, fantastic force, West Mercia, 3 counties just west of the West Midlands. And I remember very early in 2001, the force had a phrase, integrity is non-negotiable, and that's something that should be absolutely through policing, and that includes police officers and police staff calling out those individuals who might be acting inappropriately in any way. I also know that's really difficult to do, and I also know that all police forces have lines of communication that allow people to do that confidentially and with support, because it's a difficult thing to do. I've dealt with a number of these cases. It's really difficult for colleagues to think they're seeing something, but they question, are they seeing it? They're not quite sure, they need support, they want to do it confidentially. But what I would say to people is that those systems are there, those processes are there, and it's got to be done because it goes to the heart of public confidence.
We touched very briefly on violence against women and girls. It would be, I think, inappropriate for me to move on without returning now to that. And I'll acknowledge here first that, you know, here we are, 2 white men. Forgive me for this, Alan, but of a certain age. Sure. That, you know, what might we be doing commenting on violence against women and girls? To which my response would be, actually, it's important for all members of society to support those who, though in my case I may not have the same characteristics. You know, I'm a bloke. What do I know about violence against women and girls? Well, I know it from their personal accounts. Is there more that policing and society should do against violence against women and girls?
Undoubtedly, and many people will have seen the report from Manchester Inspector of Constabulary, I think just last week, saying more needs to be done, and not but, and it needs to be done in a partnership approach with health agencies, local authorities, police, local people taking a lead to resolve it. So there's no doubt that more needs to be done, and it concerns me greatly when you see these concerns of women and girls when they don't feel safe. And you know, I often said in policing that sometimes the statistics were the reality, but how people felt were the perceptions. Sometimes perceptions didn't always meet reality, but policing has to deal with that, and there is no doubt, absolutely no doubt, that many women and girls feel unsafe, and that has to be something that is tackled, as HMIC have said, and policing does need to do more with its partners. It's a complex situation, but the bottom line is that police are here to protect people.
Let's just take a moment to wander around a little further. We have this magnificent vehicle, and we've not yet just taken a look inside it. I'm not going to go up the stairs, but you'll see there the stalls for I think 3-4 horses in total when the barriers are moved through. Presumably further beyond that, the quarters for the officers and maybe the groom at the time, and
the tack.
And the tack, of course,
yes,
the tack as well.
I'm informed by my daughter that tack is something to do with horses.
In your time here, are there any particular elements, challenges that in policing in some way remain unresolved, or that you look back and think, well, policing has only made so much progress, if only it had made more?
So I think, interestingly, I think the increased transparency and accountability of policing is a good thing, because policing in its widest sense is being asked to do more. That's a good thing. What must come with that is greater partnership working. I think that's a challenge that's not resolved, but these are what are known, I'm told, as wicked problems, and often you don't solve a wicked problem, you have to lead through it with partners and the community and make the situation better together. Whether you ever solve the problem, whether you'll ever solve crime, it's a philosophical matter. You might solve a crime, you might reduce crime, but crime is inherently associated with people, and some people will commit crime.
So there'll always be a need for policing.
Unquestionably there'll be a need for policing, but that, I think, continues to develop and transform as we go. But the keeping people safe, taking care of victims, locking up the bad people, looking after your colleagues, those things are always going to be there in policing. Interestingly, you say about, since my time here at Milton Keynes, I was the area commander here 2008 to 2010, and it was in the days of statistics, and people that were in policing will remember the sort of performance regimes that I think fell out of the United States and became somewhat de rigueur in UK policing, and it led to skewed consequences. And without naming names, I remember an area commander in the Met saying to me that if he had 20 unresolved vehicle crimes, he might be able to sleep at night, but if he had one young person that's missing, he couldn't. And that's what I always saw in policing, that really good police officers were focused on the right things, but sometimes the systems weren't, and as I say, we had skewed outcomes, and I know the Police Superintendents Association of One were really working hard to resolve that, and we moved to a position, I think a much better position, of doing the right thing. I'm just wondering, having seen the fighting crime plan, I'm just wondering how that's going to land. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute there's an intention that we end up back at the performance culture, performance management days,
but might we be heading that way?
But what I would say is, we want to make sure that we're not heading that way, and we need to not sleepwalk into that, and we need to remember what happened in the early mid-2000s, take the learning from that, and yeah, absolutely take the numbers and share the numbers with the public, but understand the rich picture, not just base decisions on performance statistics. So is that resolved? I don't know, but I don't want to go back there. The partnership thing, I think, has got to get better. And if I might, one other thing, and that is, we've talked about recruiting. It feels to me, maybe because I'm getting old, Bernard, but it feels to me
aren't we both?
that we're asking police officers to go into dangerous situations, perhaps more dangerous situations, with not enough information, not enough training, not enough supervision and support, because of some of the decisions that have been taken over the last 10 years and the change in the makeup of policing. And that concerns me, because that's dangerous, and the police need to be as safe as they can and as professional as they can, so they can protect the public. So that's a challenge, I think, that is in front of all chief officers.
It reminds me that next week I'm very fortunate to have been invited to the Police Bravery Awards, which will be taking place, and that of course is a reminder of the complete and utter selflessness of so many police officers who are putting themselves into positions where they are absolutely heroic in what it is that they're doing. Alan, we've covered quite a lot of ground. We have these beautiful horses looking upon us. We've had this wonderful opportunity to share the Thames Valley Police Tactical Support Mounted section, if I refer to the board just over there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for arranging an invite to us, to this wonderful stables, and thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure on my part. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bernard. Really enjoyed it.